I have the piece of balsa wood laid out on a flat surface. I have my plans handy and I have a ruler and a marker. Note of caution, do not use mechanical pencils to mark on your balsa wood. It will ruin it. The first thing that I am going to do is mark off my wing dimensions. On page 2, I see that my wing is going to span 50.1 centimeters. The middle chord, right in the middle of that span, is 7.4 centimeters. And at the end, the tip chord is 5.2 centimeters. I'm going to mark that off on the balsa wood. Using my ruler, I lined it up from the start of the balsa wing to the midsection, because I can use a simple ruler to mark off half of that wingspan, 25.05. I marked off the middle of the wingspan, and then from the mid of the wingspan to the next tip, I have 25.01 again. Next, I use the ruler to mark off 5.2 centimeters at the wing tip chord. In the middle of the wing, I went ahead and put a perpendicular line. Doesn't look very straight for whatever reason. And then at the other end of the tip, I marked off 5.2 centimeters again. The next thing that I will do is use the ruler to connect the tip of those two lines. Here's my wing all marked off and ready to be cut. There are still some imperfections on the markings, so I will be very careful when I cut the ends off the tip of that wing. It is time to mark off the horizontal stabilizer on my piece of balsa wood. 16 centimeters is the span, and as I transfer that over, I will leave a little bit of space in between the end of the wing and the beginning of the horizontal stabilizer. First, I lined up the ruler underneath the balsa wood, and I marked off 16 centimeters. I marked off at the 0 and I marked off at the 16. Then I put two straight lines that measured exactly 4.5 centimeters. And of course, I connected the top end. My horizontal stabilizer is ready to be cut out. Last part with the balsa wood, this is the vertical stabilizer. It is 7 centimeters tall, 4.5 centimeters wide. Now, even though I have 7 centimeters span on here, I will make sure that I turn my vertical stabilizer this way because I want to use the texture of the wood. Here's the horizontal stabilizer. I have marked the front of the glider. This is going to be the tip facing the wind direction. It is exactly 7 centimeters tall and 4.5 centimeters wide. It might feel to some of you I'm working backwards. Next, I'm going to fill out the fuselage dimensions. I need to mark off the length of my total fuselage, 40 centimeters. So I will take the beginning point of the fuselage and I will measure out 40 centimeters. My ruler wasn't quite long enough, so I went ahead and measured 30 centimeters and then I measured out 10 more. This is the end of the fuselage, so I remember what piece I'm cutting off. I put an X through it. Next, I also have to mark a few more locations. I have to mark the distance from the tip of the fuselage to the beginning of the wings. Tip fuselage to the beginning of the stabilizers. I should also mark my center of gravity. I have all markings, and the next step will be to cut. Note, I put labels, appropriate labels, 17 centimeters to the beginning of the wing. I have the center of gravity marked and labeled. Center of gravity is going to be found on page 3 at the very bottom. And then I also have the location for the stabilizer, which I measured off from my 30 centimeter mark. I'm ready to start cutting. All right, we're ready to start cutting. Please note, I am protecting the surface that I'm cutting over. I want you to please do the same. I have a cutting mat, but you can certainly use any piece of cardboard. I have a nice sharp utility knife. I am using a ruler with a metal edge so I can easily guide my knife over the metal edge. It's not a requirement, you can do that with a regular ruler too. Cut one slice all the way through, okay? It's not gonna cut all the way through the material, but I have started at the end and I made it all the way through. And I'm going to come back and repeat this a few times until I know that my piece has been cut. I'm being careful, making sure that my hand is not moving as I do this, and here's my piece separated. I have the span of the wing. And the next thing I need to do is cut off these straight lines, and I'm going to repeat the process. I'm all done cutting. I have the wings cut off, I have my horizontal stabilizer, and I have my vertical tail. Note that I am using the grain of the wood. I would like to see that grain rest in this direction. If I did not, if I cut my vertical stabilizer this way, it is much more prone to breaking as you guys test your glider. The next thing that we need to do is actually cut the fuselage. This is not as easy to cut as balsa wood, so please be careful. At least you just have one cut to do. My stabilizer is all cut and ready to go. Please note, you should be aware of which is the front end of your glider. Don't try to put the mess to remember. Just use your markings on the glider. Each one of your markings represents the beginning, the front part of your wing. So as you are placing the wing, you are going to mark it off with the line that you marked off for wing. Okay? I want you to please think in what exact way are you going to ensure that as you glue your wing, it will remain level. Just by holding it, it's no longer level. So please be very careful on how you do that. Probably one of the easiest things to do is use that marking that you might have made earlier. If I place the wing on the table, now I can take the fuselage, I can put a little bit of glue on the fuselage to tack it to the wings, and I can put my marking for the wing and line it up with directly on top of that line. It will also allow me to put a little bit more pressure on the fuselage and get it to be attached to that wing. All right, here's the really tricky part. I don't have any super glue handy, so I am going to use tacky glue because I have enough time to let this dry. The first thing that I did is place the glue, a little bit of glue, on top of that level straight line that I am using. Then I will carefully line up my fuselage on top of that line, ensuring that they stay straight. Like for me, I can use that cutting mat to line everything up. When I attach my fuselage, I am not ready. This is not a stable bond. And what I would like to do instead, after I have tacked it in place, now I'm going to get the glue, and by carefully holding the fuselage in place, I am going to add little wedges on the side of the fuselage. This is the better way of bonding your elements than if you were to just attach on the bottom. You cannot believe how many students lose their wings on the very first test of their glider. So please make sure you use it this way. Be careful with the amount of glue that you have. I have only given you one piece of glue, so make sure you don't go over it. You also don't want to add too much additional weight to your glider. So I am attaching now. I am attaching my fuselage to the wings using this wedge style filler. Okay. Now that this is ready, it certainly needs to rest in place so that I can move my wings, knowing they will not end up changing their location. So I'm going to let it dry. The beauty about tacky glue is that it will dry clear. Your glue will dry clear too. Just make sure that you use the same process. We're going to use the exact same process when we are attaching the stabilizers. We are going to ignore the wedge from our plan for the vertical stabilizer. Once we're all done, we are going to try to level our glider, and this is how we're going to add the mass. Remember that in our plans we used average weight for those balsa wings. Some of you have lighter wings, some of you have heavier wings. Because of that, you will need a different amount of mass. So what you are going to do is place your finger directly underneath the center of gravity. You could also try to level it on a pencil or something like that. And then you are going to continue adding mass until your glider is balanced. Front and back has to be balanced. If you see that the wings tend to tip on one direction, go ahead and use a little bit of the clay and add it, smear tiny little bit at the very edge of your wing, at the very tip of the wing. Good luck. Cannot wait to see your gliders.